Welcome back. You're watching Road to Success, the key to your next level in business. Our expert is Chris Odonga of Wild International. Karibu sana, it's nice to see you again.
It's very good to see you, Catherine.
Earlier on, we had a guest called Patrick, who's entered into a very crowded market in terms of selling his teas and his coffee and adding value to them. How does he set himself apart, or anybody who's entering into a crowded market like he is?
I think what I would tell Patrick is when you enter into a crowded market, the most important thing is to have a very clear identity and to actually have a very clear niche of which customer you want to target. Yeah, so you have to understand the problem that you're trying to solve and then be able to position yourself in a way that the customer can then now receive the communication about what you're trying to put as your products and services. You see, Patrick is adding value to tea and coffee.
Yes.
And then he's then selling that to the end consumer. And so for him, two things will be important: branding and packaging. And branding and packaging will flow from his identity in terms of what problem does the consumer have that his product is being able to solve. And that will be the branding part, because he'll now communicate that to the consumer that, look, my product is going to help you enjoy your coffee and your tea in a much more refreshing way, and you'll actually be able to prepare it faster. That's a brand. And for him to communicate that, then he has to stand out. When somebody goes to the supermarket and they're looking to buy a beverage, then immediately they have the one that they normally buy. The only way they're going to give Patrick a second look is if he stands out. When he stands out in terms of the branding, his colors are refreshing and attractive. His position in the supermarket is where the customer sort of just enters and sees his product the first time before they see even their old products. Then now Patrick stands a chance. Now, if he has also packaged it in a way that assures the consumer that, look, this is a quality product, it has been handled very well from the factory until here, then he now stands a chance.
And that can only be seen on the image because we don't know the process.
The consumer does not know the process that has gone through the product coming to the shelf. But how you put it at the shelf is very important, because then it convinces the consumer that you have taken time to develop your product and therefore it should be worth my time.
Chris, what about services? Products, at least we see.
Yeah,
that's totally different. We can see them in the supermarket, you can see them displayed somewhere. What advice would you give anybody entering into an industry or a market that is saturated with
particular services?
Yeah, particular services, yeah.
Products and services are not so different in the consumer's mind. Yeah, anyone who wants to consume your service at the end of the day is looking at how does your service solve my
problem. Yes.
You know, and so I'll just take you back to what I'd shared earlier. You start with your identity, and your identity involves why you exist and what you stand for, and more importantly, what are the products you're offering, or what are the services you're offering, and how do those services solve the client's problems, you know?
Yes.
And so when it comes to branding is all about communicating that our products and services solve your problems and they solve it in this way. And at the end of it, these are the benefits you will get. And so a lot of times when you want to do services, then you want to focus on the benefits that somebody will derive from interacting with you and from buying that service for you.
What about packaging a service? How does one go about that?
The mind is a very interesting thing. It likes to wrap itself around tangible things. So even if you're offering a service, and you have branded it well, you still need to be able to package it so that the consumer can have a tangible exchange with your service. And so, for example, when you go into a service-oriented business, they normally have brochures, they normally have catalogs. They will have been easily presented to you that same information by just giving it to you verbally. But they normally tell you, here's our brochure, kindly carry it with you. Why? So that you have a tangible representation of what their service is. And this brochure normally needs to be designed in a way that is appealing, and it is now what carries the brand of the service.
Why, in your opinion, do you think that SMEs or startups are so afraid to get into branding?
SMEs and startups largely don't understand branding, and they confuse branding with advertising, and they confuse branding with logos, And so somebody, when they start up their business, they go and they get a logo and they think that that's branding.
Isn't that part of branding?
It is a part of branding that you have to have a logo, but it's not the end of branding. Branding is all about making sure that the customer gets the experience of the promise that your brand made to them, so that every single time I buy that service from you or that product from you, I get the same experience and I get the same benefit. And over time, that now becomes a brand. And if you notice, when we talk about things like detergents, talk about things like banking, talk about things like margarine or food products, there are certain brands that are attached to them. They've achieved this why? Consistently delivering the same quality of service and product over time. Until now, people know them for those particular things.
Because they're talking a lot about their brands, most of these major brands, isn't it? And they're using all means to communicate this message.
True.
What advice then would you give an SME who doesn't have that kind of money, or a startup? How would they start shouting about themselves?
You don't have to use money to shout about yourself. You just have to deliver your products the best you can. Then you will have what you call adorers and brand ambassadors. People who, because of the experience they've had with you, they'll just go out there and talk about you. And so I'll tell an entrepreneur, if you don't have money, focus on your product delivery, focus on your service delivery, ensure that anytime you interact with a client, they get what you promised. And that client then becomes your brand ambassador. And more importantly, Catherine, make sure that the promise you give your customer, you always deliver on it. And if possible, exceed that promise.
Exceed and keep your promises.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
Thank you for watching Road to Success, the key to your next level in business. Your feedback is important to us. Please SMS them to 20511, starting with the word think. Have a blessed week.